Welcome, welcome. It's DePin Day. DePin Day. How many were you here last time for DePin Day? Decent amount? Well, this is a much fuller house. We're very excited to have everybody here. First and foremost, want to shout out, we have so many good logos here. We want to get that on the backdrop, but we're very excited for our sponsors. We want to give them some credit because without them, couldn't have made this possible. So let's give them a shout out. We're going to get them up here in a minute. There we go. So I want to first and foremost thank Genzio. Genzio is an amazing marketing agency. They're the one that ran this thing. They're all behind the scenes. They're all in the back, so give them some love back there. Thank you, Genzio, for doing this. Voster Studios. Isn't this nice? Isn't this great? Like my friend Yogi, he calls this the big-ass screen. This is what it is. This is incredible. Voster Studios, you guys are amazing for being such a grateful host. All the team members have been lovely. We're so happy that we can use this place to step up and elevate our experience for events. So everybody online watching this, thank you for tuning in. This is going to be a high production studio event. We're very excited. We're also excited for IoTex. Shout out to IoTex. Thank you so much for sponsoring us. And we got Rogue in the house. Dylan, Smiley, feel better. Thank you so much for supporting us. Conduit, myself, I'm Scott. I'm one of the co-founders here. Thank you for coming. Crank, Helium Deploy, and then finally GeoNet. So, without further ado, everyone excited to get going? Let's go. We got a little feature video for you, and let's get going.
What's going on, Seattle? Super excited to be with you guys today. This is round 2 for DePin Day. We did one in like 2 weeks. We just figured out we were going to do it, and then we did it. But we had time. So we have some incredible guests. We have some incredible speakers that are going to be up here. And I'm just going to get things off and rolling. First off, our session is going to be around Telco. And for that Telco session, we have Sean, Sunny, Maria, Tyler, and Anoop coming on stage. Guys, come on up. Let's get the party started. We got a lot to talk about. And, well, we'll see how late we get out of here. But we're going to have a great, great time. Ken, you coming up too? Come on up, brother. All right, give you guys a warm welcome. Now, I am not going to do justice introing each one of these guys, so I want to make sure we can go around real quick and get a quick intro. Let us know, what is it that you do? Where do you work? And why are you excited to be here, possibly? And actually, since we have Maria on screen, Maria, let's make sure you can hear us and vice versa. Give us a little intro. Why are you here with us today, and what is it that you do?
Hey guys, my pleasure to be with you. Good morning for all of you there. Good evening or afternoon, whoever the people are in the world. I'm calling in from London. Yes, I'm Maria, CEO of Weaver Labs. We are a telco startup building decentralized or distributed orchestration software, giving the ability for telcos to distribute workloads across infrastructure that they own or they share and access as a service. My background is telecoms. I'm a PhD in wireless communications and really excited to discuss the future of telco in DePin.
So glad to have you here with us, and you are with us. So don't feel free to interject, like be part of the conversation. Don't hold back just because you're on the screen. Tyler.
Well, I'm here because. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, hello. I'm here because Brandon invited me, so that's probably first and foremost. But my name is Tyler. I run product at a telecom startup called 3num. So we're trying to help secure the communication infrastructure within wireless, and I'm excited to chat with these fine folks on stage as well.
Fantastic, Ken.
Yep. I'm Ken Anderson, CTO of Tashi. We built a consensus engine. We're validating it in the gaming space, but my background is in telecom. And so I'm here to throw the grenades into the conversation and see if I can shake things up.
I thought that was my job, but all right, we'll roll with it. Sonny.
Hi guys, my name is Sonny Velicities. I'm with Conduit. I'm on the hardware and telco side. I come from a background of telecommunications and semiconductor, and real happy to be here today.
All right, your voice is a little low, Sonny. If you don't mind, put that mic up. I see Maria over there going like.
Is this any better?
Oh, you sound great. All right, let's make sure we wrap up this panel.
I'm Anup Nandra. I'm the co-founder CEO of TrueGuard Labs. I run a sustainability nonprofit called the Open Sustainability Collaborative and a venture studio. I'm here because Ken told me to show up. And the first half of my career was in the telco space. I've been both a provider of technology and a receiver of technology, so I've been an operator. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for telcos, so let's get into it.
I love it. And I agree with you as far as opportunities for telco, which is a little bit odd to even say because telco has been one of those things that it's not for the people, it's for companies, it's for organizations to run, not us. So how are we breaking down those barriers? What do you think has been a catalyst to actually propel this initiative forward? If anybody has thoughts on that.
So I'll take a crack at that. So I think the opportunity for DePin, right, just broadly, is to kind of give telcos an unfair advantage in the economics that can be unlocked, right? And I think there's a lot of work that's going on the wholesale side of the telco space. I don't think we've really cracked the nut on kind of the retail side of that experience. That's work that's to be done. But I think in general, when I look at how slow telcos have historically operated, right? I mean, if you've been an operator, been a service provider, been an MSO, an MVNO, you know that the OSS BSS systems are highly complex, sophisticated, all truly centralized systems. There's typically, on average, anywhere between 20 and 30 different IT systems that are trying to coordinate all of that infrastructure, all of that subscriber data, and what have you. And so there is kind of a molasses that is inside the telco space. And so, they're all trying to innovate, right? Like, don't get me wrong, they're all trying to figure that out. But the challenge that they'll generally have is to go after retail and adjust that retail experience. And let's be fair, service providers own and control the last mile experience across the board. They've not really been able to capitalize on that from an innovation perspective. On the wholesale side, different story. But I think there's a lot of opportunity that can be done and realized on the retail side and actually enabled through DePin. So I think DePin's the Trojan horse that unlocks potential.
Now that last mile, we're talking about edge right here. That's
100%.
Yeah, that's all the talk because now we're not here saying, oh yeah, can we get towers around and cover large areas? We're talking about being right there at the point where the customer is, right?
And every service provider worth their salt, they've played the data center game. They've played the core infrastructure game, right? And there's relationships with every cloud provider, every backbone provider. So the backbone is well covered. Right, it's that last mile that, the killer use case for 5G is not video streaming. It's not watching TikTok and YouTube videos, right? That's not what 5G was designed and invented for. It was designed for industrial applications, ultra low latency, high bandwidth use cases. we haven't really unlocked that. DePin, I think, is an enabler. It is the killer use case for 5G and everything else that will follow.
All right, so for the ones of you that might not know, like when you're talking about 5G, essentially that frequency doesn't get too far. And the further it goes, the worse it gets. So you really need to be super close. Sonny, you guys are working on something for that, right? Like I think that's one of the goals of Conduit.
Yeah, I was shadowing a lot of your thoughts as you spoke. I'd offer a couple observations to add to that. Is really the issue with last mile, and last mile is the game, absolutely 100%, always has been. Whoever conquers the last mile owns that area, city, neighborhood, town, country, for decades. And that has historically been the game. And you've got regulatory overlays, you got capital questions, and then you've got permissibility, building towers, digging lines. You know, it's not just the technology. There's so much going on. Telco is, the business of telco is a government game. Permissions, grants, relationships. So it's hard for independents to come out and say, hey, I'm going to solve telco. I've invented this new whiz-bang doohickey, because they're going straight up against, you know, the cabal, if you want to put it. And I don't say that in an evil sense. I mean that, you know, they've evolved to serve the markets based off of, you know, the resources available to them, and they've done their best. And they've covered all of us. We're all connected right now. We all have cell phones, and they work, and that's awesome. But there's a lot of places where it doesn't work. And telephones typically do work. And let's talk about third world countries like India. You know, you can get a cell phone for next to nothing, a feature phone for $25, literally a smartphone feature phone for $25 wholesale. And then Reliance Jio, and then you can get a cellular account with Jio for nothing. I mean, nothing. The price of a ham sandwich to us, and there's your monthly bill. And, you know, how can they profit in that? Well, the big secret is because that's just to get you addicted to the data. You're going to send a picture to your girlfriend and a TikTok video and this, that, and the other, and the next thing you know, your wallet's empty. And that's a big corporation, Reliance Jio. And I don't mean to call that, I mean, that's the game anywhere. Pick a country and that's the game, particularly in the unconnected markets. So a lot of places you see the statistics and they say, oh, of course we've got connectivity everywhere. And what that means is you've got cheap LTE cell phones, or GSM or whatever, mostly LTE now. You've got cheap cellular connectivity, and you have very expensive broadband. And you can't run a business off of your cell phone. Mm-hmm. Online schooling, online medicine, all of these things, you really need kind of uncapped, low-cost broadband. And that really is the meaningful measure in terms of what's left to connect. And in order to do that, you need to be able to beat regulatory restrictions, which means in a lot of cases, you need to be able to somehow solve these problems with unlicensed frequencies. That's a big deal. You talk about 5G, upper C-band. 5G is a basket of all these new technologies, right? It's not one frequency. But typically, in that basket, most of them are higher frequencies, which don't go as far. Yep. You can pump a lot of data through them, though. Really, really cool, but they don't go as far. 5G is not a rural connectivity solution. It really isn't. What 5G is, it's about allowing big telco to better monetize their population in economic dense zones where we're sitting right now. That's where you experience the benefit of 5G. But in connecting the unconnected in the traditional broadband sense that I just described, no way. I mean, it plays a small role, sure. But it's up to everybody else to come up with our edge solutions. And the only way you can, the real problem is there's not enough economic density to drive the traditional model. So you need to find a way to change that economic density formula. And the technology can do that, unlicensed frequency, open RAN. Decentralized telecommunications is the answer. But the technology burden is too high for your average guy to participate and connect himself. So you need to make the tech stack simple. That's critical. And a lot of the guys on the stage have done that. And then the next step is you need to provide incentivization to get the guy up off the couch. And that's it. That's the magic formula. And really, DePin and Telco, that's the story. That's really where it's going. And frankly, there's a lot of really good projects that are just right there about to explode.
I completely agree. I love seeing the quiet part out loud, and I just heard Tyler call it what was it, the
Telco Mafia?
Yeah, there you go. But you're partnered with one of them.
We have a pilot project with one of them. Yeah, they're a little bit of a mafia. It's interesting. I think that the DePin model really makes a lot of sense in solving that, what I would call the low-hanging fruit, which is that last mile connectivity. There's some other interesting things about telco that I think they're in a really unique position to solve, which is the largest and the most ubiquitous communication identifier that we have is a phone number, and so it's arguably the largest social graph. And so with users that have gone through kind of a KYC onboarding, telcos are in a very interesting position to start leveraging other layers of this sort of Web3 ecosystem that is intersected with DePin, that becomes kind of compelling because they're being relegated to what's called dumb pipes in a lot of senses. And so as the proliferation of DePin on sort of the connectivity side starts to happen, I think we're going to see further integrations up the telco stack that really unlocks new use cases for customers, and it allows the telcos to keep sort of their competitive advantage, if you will. So,
Maria, let me get you in the mix here.
If I can just come in to comment a little bit on the DePin model on telecom. So, I mean, we kind of came into it from the telco perspective. I knew nothing about blockchain before I started kind of digging into how could we look at accessing infrastructure as a service in an agile way and a flexible way. And blockchain came kind of as a solution to a problem that we had in our research lab. So essentially, it's looking at the problem formulation here is infrastructure is too expensive, and there is no commercial model to upgrade telco infrastructure into new generations of cellular networks. So 5G required almost 70% of revenues to be reinvested in new infrastructure, and no one has increased our bill so much, right, to make the case for such an investment. And there was a point made in the panel as well that 5G was supposed to be for the enterprise customer. Well, actually, the mobile network operator hasn't really cracked the enterprise market as they would like to. So there has to be a cost that needs to be cut somewhere, or an efficiency that needs to come from somewhere. And infrastructure sharing is a natural way to obviously reduce the costs, right? Traditionally, MNOs own the entire telco infrastructure, or most of the telco infrastructure, active equipment that is used in the globe. Maybe in the US, you guys have a more sharing model, but at least here, it's almost 100%. The infrastructure is owned by the MNO, which means that areas that is commercially viable, you have they're heavily and densely in terms of coverage, and there are areas that are really underserved. So blockchain or DePin for us became a solution to allow for agile neutral hosting, if you want to call it like that. So how can we build infrastructure that is completely neutral and put a layer that allows telcos to access that infrastructure as and when they need it, creating hyper flexible networks on demand. If in the same way that AWS offers that compute and storage and capacity for workloads and applications, 5G's ultimate innovation has been the separation of hardware and software. So now we can literally deploy 5G workloads in servers that we don't really have to own, right? We can just access as a service through a layer of orchestration. So this model is a solution to a problem, an economic problem that this industry has. But one of the failures that I have seen within the DePin, like the decentralized approach, and some of the companies that have looked into solving this problem using blockchain, or it's that we expect to solve this problem by allowing the retail or the end user create that density of assets, whereas the telcos they have because they own spectrum, they need to comply to a lot of regulation in terms of service uptime and the quality of the service that they need to give to their users. So it's really, really hard to adopt that model for them. And I think that some of the issues that we are having within DePin is generating that level of trust to actually work with the telco industry. And this is one of the things that we struggle the most. And I don't know if you guys in the panel as well, but is the credibility of, yeah, I'm accessing an infrastructure as a service. Is it good? Am I going? If you don't own it, you don't touch it. That's kind of like the premise, right, within telco. So going into a dense network created by end users, it gives less and less and less possibility for them to use it. So that's kind of like the challenge that I see, whereas the opportunity, I think is huge in terms of the technology.
No, I couldn't agree more. The trust piece here in a trustless environment that we love to say that we live in is a huge deal. Ken, you want to drop some social bombs here?
Social bombs.
Yeah, that's when you get people who actually like argue with each other.
No, I mean, the question I always ask is like, why blockchain, right? Why not just a centralized database with tokens and clearing and all that stuff? You can do settlement in a centralized manner. But I think everybody kind of answered that. So I appreciate actually everybody's perspective here, but I'm going to kind of lean back a little bit into some things that have been said. Anoop talked about OSS and BSS. If you're not familiar with that, OSS is operational support systems, BSS is business support systems. OSS is the layer of telco that you're selling, and BSS is how you sell those things. So that's going to be all of your economics, your business, your CRM, sales, all of the, even some of the call control plane stuff kind of overlaps BSS and OSS. But then at the OSS layer, you have all of your hardware, all of your network function virtualization, all of your software-defined networks, SDNs. So there's all of that stuff going on. And I think Maria even just talked about it, like there's kind of a business side and then there's a hardware side. And the business side is lots of times harder than the hardware side. Like the hardware side we can solve pretty quickly. So where I see this kind of playing out, and Sunny talked about this, of like, if we can make this like one-click simple, and we can make it economically valuable enough for people to like click the button, then we have this network that we can build. And I remember back, it was probably like 10, 15 years ago, there was a project called Project Oasis, and I don't know where it went, but it was like a whole peer-to-peer mesh network. Like, you've got a cell phone with Bluetooth, and I think at the time 4G, and how can we connect, and Wi-Fi, how can we connect our phones peer-to-peer and then create this kind of overlay network over that peer-to-peer network? The problem was it ate up everybody's battery in the proof of concept. So it was not a viable solution. It was a cool concept, but it was kind of one of those earlier projects of like, how do you create these mesh networks that can create, to Maria's point, like a reliable network that has credibility as a reliable network? Because as Sunny said, when you pick up the phone, there's a dial tone. Like, that's one of the cool things about telco. I mean, I think Sprint spent, like, they had triple redundancy at one point, spent stupid amounts of money 10 years ago to have triple redundancy so that you just always had a dial tone when you picked up the phone. So there is a reliability and a credibility challenge in the telco space that you have to meet as like the lowest threshold, the lowest bar of performance. Now, what I love about DePin and why I think this is applicable is, and I'm thinking of it even from like what we're doing, where we're moving cloud services for gaming to the edge, is that the services that are on the edge, there's no cost when they're not being used. And the cost only is incurred when people are making requests to use the services. And it's similar with even the hardware. If your hardware is sitting there and not servicing any calls or whatever, as the network or as the provider, you're not incurring a cost. Well, telcos have to maintain their infrastructure 24/7 all the time, constantly monitoring, constantly upgrading. Like, there's just an underlying cost that just exists there. But if, as the edge user, I'm being incentivized to maintain that infrastructure, until somebody makes a request, there's no cost to the network. So there's an efficiency that comes with aligning incentives at the edge with the hardware that exists at the edge. So I think, to Sunny's point, if we can make that a one-click simple, make the economic value enough for people to actually make that one click, And to Maria's point, if we can create this kind of orchestration mechanism to create that reliability and consistency of service, that quality of service that meets that minimum trust level, then we have a real play. And again, I think we're all talking last mile here. So I think we have a play on the telco level to maybe make that Oasis project vision actually come to fruition. So
just to double click on the reliability component, right? Service providers, telcos, MSOs, what have you, the bar is quite high. I mean, there's this thing called 5 nines availability, right? So quick show of hands who knows what 5 nines availability is. Okay, so enough people know, so I won't explain it. Cloud, at best, is 3 nines. So the opportunity for DePin is to create a 5 nines reliable edge experience to obviate cloud. That's the Trojan horse we're trying to lead into here, right? If we address that, you don't need to deploy anything in the cloud anymore. So there's
That's
a
exactly the
social
reason
bomb
why
right
the
there.
telcos haven't adopted the public cloud, actually, because of the 3 nines. I have been in panels with AWS and British Telecoms yelling at each other because of that. So if we really want to create a compelling offer to the telcos, then we need to provide that sort of reliability. Otherwise, we are seeing how there is a lot of reluctance in terms of adopting new business models, such as the public cloud. So this is even one step further than that.
I'll pile in on that too, and it really is important. It breaks down to 2 things. You need to be multi-homed, and you got to have power backup, and that's it. All kinds of nines will come flying at you, but you can't do that right now with the decentralized mesh options that you have. They're not really built that way, or they put that burden on the end user or the integrator, and it's not, again, plug and play. And most of those systems don't even have those capabilities. So that's just, you solve that, and you're really you're in a home run situation.
Well, we've even sort of seen that with if people have like deployed hardware for these projects like Helium or XNet, where it started with a fairly wide open. Now everybody can plug it in, and it works. To okay, we're gonna have to refine this a little bit more, so you can't just set this up in some bedroom somewhere that's not facing. And so if you've been a deployer and you've actually set up hardware before, you're starting to feel the pains of that a little bit by ensuring that it actually conforms to these standards that they need for it to work the way that they're legally obligated to offer.
I mean, I like it to a certain extent because it means that there's less people deploying, which means I make more money. But like we're at a point where we got to change that, right? Like we got to get to the plug and play and get everybody on the same page because sure, I have 3 racks at my house full of stuff, but that's not the norm. That's not how we actually get everybody kind of involved in this thing. And talking about reliability, I mean, there's nothing better for reliability than people who actually believe in getting this done and deploying it everywhere, especially if there's a net plus for you to do so. Because I think that's been a lot of the problems, the frictions that this is fake internet money that doesn't really mean anything, and yet people are retiring in their 20s because of it.
There's obviously it's good for the blockchain world for that excitement to occur. It builds potential and brings people into the community, which is the real goal that makes everything happen. But there's a limit to that. If you're not actually connecting people and providing real utility value, it can only go so far, and at a certain point you get community apathy. So I think it's very important, and we've already started to see this shift, and DePin is that shift really, but even within the DePin space there's a meaningful shift where people just really don't want to talk about the token reward structure as much. They want to know, what does this do? And because if it does something better than the old models, then it's going to win in the market, and the token structure reward system will follow. That's the winning formula.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to a lot of the people out there that are streaming, right? Like a lot of the quote unquote influencers, some of them that are here, like Serenity is an example. We're at the point where they're focusing on what it does, not how much it makes. Like that has to be step number one if we want this thing to actually move forward and be a viable option for everyday users. Otherwise, we're just trying to, roll people in with that fake internet money, and there's only so much that speculation can do when there's no real revenue behind it.
Yeah, and this is why I love DePin, by the way. And session 6 today, which is going to be on business, we're going to be hitting hard on this, but I just love what Sonny was just talking about, is like, you can make a lot of money real quickly on a reward system that incentivizes early adopters and then goes away in 6 months. And there are people who have done very well in the blockchain crypto space on that. And I think adding visibility to these types of projects is good, but really, maybe the better option is, how do I know that a project's going to be sustainable long enough that I can continue to earn for many years into the future, and how many projects can I participate in that have that viability to take real world revenue that is already spent. People are already spending money on telcos and infrastructure and their mobile services and their internet services. People are already spending money in those spaces. Like, there's already a market there for us to optimize using this technology. And I think for us, even in the gaming space, we're looking like, oh, there's a $40 billion gaming infrastructure space. That's our TAM. I'm going to talk more about that in session 6, but I love that Sonny's coming back to that of like, the tokens are there to incentivize people to keep their devices up and running, to support the network so that the DePin actually works, so we get that quality of service. So it's not a non-issue. It's not something we shouldn't be talking about, but I think the important thing is like, how long is that going to be valuable to me? If it's valuable to me for 3 to 6 months, it might be a fun little like slot machine pull. Like, okay, cool, that's fun. But am I trying to build a business here? There's somebody in the audience that we were talking to yesterday who's like legitimately built a deployer business and is generating revenue and creating a business around viable DePin infrastructure and deployment. Such a cool, I love that we're starting with the viability of these problems we're solving, and then we're talking about the token next.
Sonny, you brought up a really good point in regards to regulation. Like, this is not an easy market to get into. I mean, a little tip, if you guys want to know what next communication device is coming out, just watch the FCC's website. I literally have like set up alerts on that. It takes a lot. Like, it takes a lot for somebody to actually spin one of these things up and get it into people's hands. Is that barrier to entry going to decrease at any point?
So the FCC chairman under old Trump, Pi, he finally authorized 6 gigahertz unlicensed. And that is so much delicious spectrum to be used for a lot of these mesh networks, community networks, individualistic driven decentralization projects that do not require the license frequencies. You have a frequency auction and you're selling these little bands for billions of dollars. Well, man, that's going, that's the regulatory, the hurdle, the telco mafia, if you want to call it that. And get telco friend guys. I mean, I don't mean to demonize them. They're just playing their game. If you're given that hand, heck yeah, go for it. But we're trying to solve the other problems. And to have unlicensed frequencies, now you've got CBRS, 3.5 gigahertz, which some of that is also available, although there's some usage rules that I'm not really happy with. But the permissioning layer on it makes it a little bit complicated, but nevertheless, you can still use it, right? And then you can jump up, you got 60 gigahertz. There's places you can jump up and down all over the spectrum. Half of 900 megahertz is available, although that's more IoT sort of related. Point being is you can do it as long as your tech stack is flexible enough to flow through all these frequencies, plug and play. And specifically to your point, Action, it's that 6 gigahertz changes everything. It really does. If you sit down and look at the spectrum availability, the utility of 6 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz is the unlicensed workhorse. All the towers and everything, you see everybody, corporate buildings talking to corporate buildings, all 5 gigahertz, it's awesome. I mean, it's awesome, it works, it's great, it's cheap. 6 gigahertz is that better with much of the same properties, right? But you get much, much, much more of it. And nobody's been using it. People have been using 5 gigahertz forever, yet we can still go in this neighborhood and set up a we set up a 5 gigahertz network for the city of Dallas. And it works. It works in an RF combat zone because you're using massive decentralization. You're not competing with everybody else at the same tower. So in decentralization, you can bring that same 5 gigahertz where you're competing on a tower or the hill that everybody has to go to because they're limited to line of sight. In a fully decentralized, scalable network, you can bring that point down to where there's no it's uncontested. You can go from neighborhood to neighborhood, pole to pole. You could do that in Manhattan. Now, that's today with 5 gigahertz, and that's been being utilized for decades. Now, add many times more of that same quality spectrum right there, and it has just been turned on. Now, this is going to affect telcos. This eats into their model, and that's why I mean, if you want to play the conspiracy game, that's why it has been so long to actually get pushed live, even after they announced it. They sat back and, well, we've announced it, it's legal, but we still have to publish the rules on using it. And you had to wait a couple years for that. Now we're finally there. So there's more along those lines. There's a trend that's forming. These are cascading across. Once the FCC does it, it's kind of like the FAA. You know, all the equivalent agencies around the world, sort of domino effect, bring it in. TV white space, ultra low frequency, travel from miles and miles and miles through the bush to connect people. That also is a wave. It's propagating across all the FCC equivalents. The tools are there where they have not been before, and the tech stack to control them and to monetize them, and now with DePin to provide the initiative to get people up off the couch, it's a perfect storm because these people want to be connected. Mothers want their kids to be connected to do online schooling. They desperately, sorry, I'm a little bit emotional about this, but I've been fighting this fight for a long time. Like the UN, I believe it was 2 years ago, just shy of 2 years, put out a report that sub-Saharan Africa, as much as 40% of the individual GDP, all these people, the individual, their earnings every year, as much as 40% goes to telco services. We're talking about the poor. And that tracks back to what I described. You get a cheap phone, and it's super cheap, it's super great, and you get addicted to the data, and they drain you dry. And that is the business model, and nobody wants to change it. These decentralized networks can do that, and the money is there. Once you do that, you're unlocking massive payouts. I mean, the money is there if you introduce that efficiency, and you can do so with unlicensed frequencies and decentralized networks.
Amen.
I do want to make sure that we get all you guys here involved and you watching online as well, because we can get your questions and get them, read out loud here. So I just want to open up the floor. If you guys have any questions, anything you guys want to ask the panel in regards to telcos, just raise your hand. I'll get a mic over to you. Coming right behind you.
First of all, thank you. I didn't know any of that. But to you, Sonny, what is Conduit going to do to solve that problem?
Conduit is a consortium of different technology groups that have come together to build something that they couldn't do on their own, really. You could almost call it a virtual merger. The entity that I came from and coming to Conduit is called Aura Networks, and we've been working on these problems specifically at Uganda, Nigeria, Dallas, Detroit, Kazakhstan, even Russia before the unspoken happened. These systems come together and they work, and everything I've told you is that story unfolding. The DePin angle of it allows it to really proliferate like never before, and consumers are understanding that now. So if you told that story 5 years ago, some would be interested, some would like, oh, that blockchain stuff. You know what I mean? Especially the telco types or the municipalities. And if you're building networks, they're involved to some degree, right? Maybe they're backhaul providers. Maybe it's a municipality that's providing a public connectivity grant that you're a part of, and this solution is the cheapest, most efficient, therefore you're under their radar, right? So Conduit brings together not just those telco solutions that we're talking about on this panel, but it brings together with the edge cloud. So when incentivization of, let's say your home router, let's say you've got a router on your roof in a village, and you're connecting the people around you. You've got Starlink bringing down backhaul to where it's never been. And then you have a router. And now you can share that backhaul with your neighbors in the community. And you can scale that, right? It's all plug and play. It's all self-monetized. People are incentivized. It's a micro-franchise experience as long as you get all the technical complexities out of it. And that's really what, to answer your question, what Conduit does with this consortium of technologies, but it's better. Now what you can do is you can add to that router a module. Everything is plug and play. You can add a module which allows you to bring CDN service, compute at the edge, IoT compute at the edge. So you're not choking up your backhaul, your connection back to the internet. So like if you bring down that Starlink, it's precious. You don't want to send security camera data back up through that precious backhaul resource. You want to keep it local, right? So now you're reducing costs in many different areas of this whole connectivity infrastructure, the compute infrastructure. When you combine all that together and it folds into the same, you've got your resiliency. So again, answering specifically your question, you have LTE failover combined with your primary backhaul, which means now you're equivalent to the Amazon Cloud Data Center in terms of being multi-homed. You have a module that just plug and play clicks in and it provides battery backup. All of a sudden, you've got an edge node stack that's delivering telco services that's monetizable, complete with OTT, IPTV, VASTag advertising, everything built in, and it lives at the edge. It's not snaking back to a data center anywhere. It lives at the edge, right? And now you've got your multi-homing and your battery backup. That's it. That's the goal.
I think just it's telco grade, right? As Sunny alluded to, it's telco grade capabilities at the edge, right? And what do telco grade capabilities deliver? One use case that I think everybody can get behind is public safety. Right? There are things that you can do at 6 gig from an RF perspective with millimeter wave accuracy that you couldn't do otherwise. Now bring that out to a non-centralized deployment model. There's a lot you can unlock.
One final point, just to give it a...
You're good.
Hello? Okay. One final, just to paint a picture of what you can do with that. One thing that Conduit also brings is NIST security to the edge. When you come out of the data center, you lose that physical security of a guard, or in the military construct, a CAC guard, you know, don't touch my server, right? So if you bring in all that out to the edge, you better have high security that, in a physical sense, is self-sufficient, right? So that's part of the solution. But once you have that, and you have that solution at the edge, and you can orchestrate across it, whether it's your infrastructure or somebody else's infrastructure that's a part of that same network, now you've got meaningful CDN capabilities at the edge, but in that high security construct, now you can bring LLMs where the weights and models are protected, right? You bring it, the AI at the edge for instance, HIPAA compliance. HIPAA compliance says that you can't do an LLM AI at the edge in the doctor's office and course back through to the data center, right? Because you have to go through so many security hoops of HIPAA compliance, it's untenable. So we're actually doing this. Working with a company that serves in the medical industry to put the Conduit stack in the doctor's offices so they can use that high security auto orchestration. Everything is completely self-contained, including the backhaul, which again is one of the checkoff things for HIPAA compliance, is if you control everything, the full stack at the edge, Then you can get around the complexities of trying to course through to a centralized data server, and you can deliver AI service in doctors' offices with that stack where you couldn't do it anywhere else, any other way.
Funny you say that because I was at my hospital a couple of weeks ago and I was talking about that to them with the security level. So that's amazing.
The security is the magic key in that example.
Hate to bust your bubble, but we don't use the word telco anymore. It's called MNO, mobile network operator. When's the last time you had a phone, a physical landline phone in your home? Think about that, probably a decade or more. With regard to the security, okay, I worked with all these IoT module manufacturers. 8 out of 10 of them are coming from China, okay? There's been an issue right now. The US government wants to stop that. QuickTel is the largest IoT module manufacturer on the planet. They're in T-Mobile's networks. There's a security issue. You want to talk about security? Where are the eSIM modules coming from? Where are they manufactured that go on the IoT modules? I think we need to look a little bit deeper when it comes to IoT security, because I think you're just talking fluff surface stuff. You need to go deep into this, the mobile processor chip, the embedded secure enclave. So don't call it a telco, it's an MNO.
I don't disagree with you at all.
Good.
There are so many elements that you need to be on guard of. What we're talking about is the orchestration, for instance. So if you've got a virtual machine and you want to put that file out at the edge someplace, and the orchestration, that security layer is where you need to start. And then everything else, you bring in the security concerns you're talking about and you craft your solution accordingly. But even in that sense, there's no magic silver bullet that you're going to solve 100% of the security issues. Security is a matter of degrees. What is the level of security you need? Is this $1 million security problem or is it a $10,000 security problem? And that's how you build.
Any more questions? Trying to get one final quick one here. I know Mike.
Yeah, the question is just what do you think the impact of Starlink is going to be on mobile network operators and telco and all this stuff?
Can I take this one?
Please, Maria.
I'm still here. Oh, I am. I had a little bit of a, a blackout, but I'm back. So I still, this is wearing my research hat, academic, and we do a ton of research into 6G networks and what's that going to look like. And one of the requirements that are coming from most of the service providers is multi-access technology completely aggregated into a single network. So that means that satellite, cellular, fixed, broadband should all be aggregated under one single offering and ideally under one single management layer, which it is possible, right? It's just that now administrative domains and the way that networks are constructed within the hierarchy it makes it complicated, and we use complicated architectures to interconnect all of that. But in terms of offerings like Starlink and mobile network operators, I think they're completely complementary because they offer different markets, different types of customers, and obviously attend to different types of needs as well. So for instance, we use Starlink a lot to interconnect backhaul, and we work with satellite companies that they use Starlink as a backhaul when the fiber is congested or when there is no access to the fiber. So in order to support terrestrial communication, satellite is a great option. And fiber is super expensive to build, and we have a ton of spectrum that, looking at the space. So why not use it, and why not create it as a part of a segment of the transmission that we are building already? Mobile network operators serve in the last little bit, right? Is the radio access network, the core, and then all of the other stuff is things that they're actually buying from others. So why not satellite? Why not more satellite, I would say.
I think the whole topic boils down to one metric. The Starlink is an example, and all of them, low Earth orbit, they don't do density. If everybody in the neighborhood has a Starlink, it's not the Starlink you want it to be. If you've got a cabin and you're the lone guy for a few miles, great. So really how that translates to connecting the unconnected, the masses of the unconnected, the half the world that's still unconnected with broadband. It's not the whole solution, but it's a very important part of the solution. It's your backhaul in areas when you can't get it any other way. And then you need the complementary services to be able to spread it out. And that's pretty much everything we've been talking about.
I love that. I mean, for Starlink, for me, it's my backup so my GeoNet device doesn't go down, you know? So I got my connections bonded over there. But you guys heard so much. You guys touched on IoT. You started talking about AI here. This is what happens. DePin Day is not just about a singular topic. It's about a lot of different things. And I just want to say thanks, guys, for going over such high-level information that most people don't ever get a chance to understand. And I guess it's now the time that we're bringing it back. We're bringing it back to the people, to all of us, to be able to actually be part of this infrastructure. So thank you so much for insights. And now we actually got another treat for you guys. We have another panel coming up for AI, but we got something a little special. This is where you guys clap them away and get your phones out. I meant the phone thing because we're about to put up a QR code on the screen. And you're gonna wanna get this because this is one of those that was not announced. No one knew that this was actually gonna take place until now. We're doing and this is actually, shout out to, some regulation. NFTs are now collectibles. We've got some clarity there, so shout out for that. This QR code right over here is going, get out of your way, guys, is going to be your exclusive QR code for DePin Day. And you're gonna be able to mint yourself an NFT there. I've been fighting back and forth with how long we're gonna keep this up, but it's definitely not gonna be any longer than today. Conversation was lunchtime, so we'll see how long this one lasts. So this is your opportunity to get minting away. Shout out to the Conduit guys for putting this together. People that apparently hated NFTs decided to say, yeah, no, this is cool, we'll build it. All right, while you guys are getting that settled, everybody online, hopefully you guys are snatching that up as well because it is, again, one of a kind collectible that does have a big impact. How y'all feeling? Do we need a break? Do we not need a break? You guys want some water? All right, let's do that. Let's get that going. When we come back, we're gonna have a conversation around AI. We're gonna have some awesome people that have been in the space for quite a while because AI is not new, guys. AI has been around for quite a while, and I wanna make sure that people understand where we can take it. So thank you all for hanging out for this short little session, and we're gonna back and talk about artificial intelligence.